Hi everyone, welcome back to Growing Up in Scientology. I was out in the sun yesterday and accidentally wiped all of the sunscreen off of my nose, which is why I'm looking like Pinocchio over here today. So I hope that's not as distracting to you guys as it is to me, and we will just get on with it. Something really interesting happened down here in Clearwater recently, where a top Florida lobbyist who works for Scientology, she's not a Scientologist, she just takes money from Scientology, actively tried to block me from being nominated to be a member of Clearwater's Charter Review Committee. And I thought this would be a fantastic subject for a video and open up the door to a larger conversation of Scientology buying influence in Clearwater. The person's name was Mary Repper, and she's a very well-connected and influential political consultant and lobbyist here in Florida. The heading on her website, which is maryrepper.com, reads, "Florida's premier political and corporate consultant." And that's no exaggeration. Back in August of 2011, Tony Ortega wrote a piece for the Village Voice about Mary Repper and some of her work for Scientology. Let me read you some parts of it. The title of the piece is "Scientology Uses Its Movie Stars to Woo Politicians," says former top executive. But the piece is actually about Mary Repper. Tony's discussing here what Scientology did and how they operated to try and influence things behind the scenes back when they were going through the whole debacle with Lisa McPherson and her death while in the custody of the Church of Scientology. And things were looking really dicey there for the church, and they had to figure out what they were going to do to come out on top of all this. This article was also written when Marty Rathbun was still speaking out against the Church of Scientology. So it reads here, in particular, Rathbun mentioned a concerted campaign by Scientology as it was suffering one of its worst public relations disasters after the death of parishioner Lisa McPherson, to go on a charm campaign to woo and influence Florida public officials. How did the church intend to loosen up Florida's politicians? By setting up lunches and dinners with its stable of celebrities. Tony continues to quote Marty Rathbun here. The point was to win these people over to Scientology and to support it politically and get word back down to the courts. The state dropped its criminal case in 2000, but negative publicity over McPherson was still a problem for several years as the civil case continued. The best way to counter the negative press, he adds, was with Scientology celebrities like Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Greta Van Susteren, and soap star Michelle Stafford. But Rathbun says the church needed help bringing together its stars with Florida's political influencers. For that help, Scientology turned to Republican operative Mary Repper. In 2003, the St. Petersburg Times reported that Repper had held a dinner at her house that brought together Tampa's mayor at the time, Pam Iorio, and Scientology's biggest star, Tom Cruise. And it quotes the article. Repper met Cruise about a year ago at a political function sponsored by the Church of Scientology at the Fort Harrison Hotel in Clearwater. Cruise is one of Scientology's most famous believers, and Repper has helped the church build political contacts. Repper denied to the St. Pete Times that the church had anything to do with setting up the dinner, and she told me as well, Tony, this morning by telephone from her Florida home. He quotes Mary Repper, "That isn't true. I wasn't working for them. That's a lie. How it happened was I had met Tom Cruise and some discussion ensued about a coconut cake. Geez, I said, I make a great coconut cake. He said, that's my favorite cake in the world." About 2 months later, Tom was in town. He called me. I can't tell you how excited I was getting a call from Tom Cruise. He said he wanted the coconut cake. I intended to bring it down to the Fort Harrison Hotel, but he said he would come over. While Tom was there at the house, my son said, if you love her cake, you'd love her dinners. And then Tom said, but I've never been invited. And that's how it happened. It certainly was nothing about the church. What a ridiculous story. The article gets even better, and I'll put a link in the description down below. I'm skipping a bunch of things here, but then it quotes Marty Rathbun again saying, she's such a liar. We hired her in, it must have been around 1999. And then he also quotes Mike Rinder, quoting Mike, I introduced Mary Repper to Michelle Stafford at a Hollywood Celebrity Center event, and it was the biggest day of her life. She was flown to Los Angeles for a gala event. I was her host. I'd been to her house a few times too when I was the chief spokesman for the church. I actually took Tom DeVox to dinner at her house one day. Anyway, that's an absolute, I'm not sure what the correct word is for it. It's just lying. That's the correct word. Referring to Mary's claim that she wasn't affiliated with Scientology when the politician charm campaign was happening in 2003. Mike says, I remember hiring Mary in 1998 or 1999. Marty is absolutely right. Marty was there. So was David Miscavige. There was a lunch in the Hibiscus room of the Fort Harrison Hotel. It was Miscavige, Marty, and me, and that was the first time Mary came to the Fort Harrison Hotel. And finally, the last paragraph of this article says, Repper denied that she was affiliated with Scientology at the time of the dinners, but she says she is working for Scientology today. I do work for them now, yes. After I retired, I moved up here to Hernando County. I do whatever I can to help them because I believe in them. I think they're good people, the people in that church. I'm proud to know them. I used to be proud of Marty. Shots fired. All right, so what's up with all this business about the Charter Review Committee? So I have a lot of information to cover here, so I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. Late last year, I applied for and was accepted into a 12-week program that the city of Clearwater runs called the Clearwater 101 Citizens Academy. About 20 people are accepted into the program each year. The annual program is put on by the city of Clearwater, and the purpose is to educate citizens on how exactly the city works. What are all of the departments that exist within the city? Who runs them? What do they do? Get familiar with their budget, their staffing, their missions, and it's a great program. You get to meet everyone who runs all these divisions and departments, and you get to meet their top staff, and you get to learn all about it. The goal is to get more citizens involved in local politics, and everyone who graduates the program is encouraged to get on one of the city council's advisory boards. The city council wants to be advised by people who at least understand how the city works and everything our tax money goes towards. In fact, the mayor told all of us that if we did not, after finishing the program, get ourselves on one of the city's advisory boards, we would have just wasted the last 12 weeks of our lives, and he would be very disappointed in us, in so many words. So I was encouraged by several people at the city to apply for the Charter Review Committee, which this year, and they do this every 6 years, I believe, is reviewing the charter of the city of Clearwater and proposing changes to it. There are 15 people who get appointed to this Charter Review Committee, and the city council goes through everyone who has applied, and from that list, just votes to select people to be on the committee. And everyone on the city council knows exactly who I am, and I guess you could say exactly what I represent. So I applied. And after the vote, I didn't make the cut, which I was disappointed, but I understood. But a little while later, I was given some additional information from one of the city council members that, quite honestly, surprised the hell out of me. So based on the information I was given face-to-face by the city council member, this is how things went down. The vote to decide which applicants would be selected for the Charter Review Committee was scheduled to happen at 1 p.m. on whatever the day was. The vote actually happened at 10 a.m., but it had been scheduled to occur at 1 p.m. So after the vote was finished at 10 a.m., and after I had not made the cut, this council member got a phone call on his personal cell phone from Mary Repper. And she says to him, Aaron Smith-Levin is up for the Charter Review Committee. And he replies, yes, I know. And she says to him, we cannot let that happen. And he says, well, today is your lucky day. We actually already did the vote, and Aaron was not selected to be on the committee. And Mary's response to him, this is a direct quote, was, thank God. When I was told this story, I was dumbfounded. At the same time, I was also really flattered. I was flattered that anyone actually cared enough about me being on this committee to proactively try to block it. But I was also very surprised to see what I theoretically know happens behind the scenes actually play out in real life in a way that directly impacted me. And I was also surprised, and you think I wouldn't still be surprised by things like this now, but I am. I was surprised to see the Church of Scientology once again acting upon its most petty urges at the risk of looking like a fool. These committees don't have any real power. They only have the power of advice. The city council is under absolutely no obligation to do anything at all that these committees advise them to do. Every council member already has their own ideas and their own decisions about how they're going to vote on these issues or what they want to see happen. They don't actually care what the committees recommend. The committees are a very convenient device to lean on when the advice they give happens to line up with however the city council member was already planning on voting. But the committees do still serve a purpose, not the least of which is networking and getting a chance to meet and work with other citizens who at least care enough about what's happening in this city to take the time and the effort required to serve on one of these committees. And there's great value in just being involved and knowing what's going on and at least participating in the process. And I absolutely still intend to participate in these committees moving forward. But for Scientology and Mary Repper to use any political capital whatsoever to try and block me from being on any of these committees is a fool's errand. It is completely pointless. Now you'll notice in this story that Mary didn't actually have any impact whatsoever on whether I was selected for this committee. So the point isn't that she was able to block it. The point is that she tried. And the point is that Scientology actually asked her to. And Mary, I gotta tell you, this is a message specifically for you now. If you were that worried about what your Scientology overlords were going to do or say, if you failed to block me from the Charter Review Committee, I would not want to be in your shoes when the 2020 elections come around. You thought that me being involved in the Charter Review Committee, which has no actual power whatsoever, would be consequential? Just wait for 2020, when we have 1, 2, 3 maybe city council seats opening up, plus the mayoral seat opening up. The Charter Review Committee should be the absolute least of your concerns. The single biggest issue that people in this city care about is Scientology. And as of now, we haven't really seen a local politician who has the balls to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done to call Scientology out on its bad behavior and tell the people directly that they're not going to take it anymore. And everybody wants to be mealy-mouthed about it and be politically correct, but that's not what the people want. They want to know that the people representing them are not afraid of the Church of Scientology. The Charter Review Committee? Really? That's going to be the least of your concerns. Just wait and see. The city is coming up to, pretty quickly, I think, a line in the sand. And that's because of how much cash the city is about to dump into its last and best hope to truly bring its downtown area back to life for real. And to bring back a vibrant, self-sustaining business district in our downtown sector. And so you also have the commensurate amount of money that Scientology is going to throw around to try to interfere with these plans in any underhanded way that it can. If those who want to see the downtown succeed are appropriately educated on what they're actually dealing with when it comes to the Church of Scientology, their motives, their tactics, and their agenda, they can successfully navigate around Scientology's efforts to block what they're doing. Scientology will, of course, attempt to use the influence that it buys from people like Mary Repper. Mike Rinder wrote a fantastic article on this subject a few months ago, specifically as it applies to Clearwater. I'm going to link to it down below. Let me read you a few parts of it. This was written in January of 2019. The title is Clearwater and How Scientology Buys Influence. A few nights ago, the Clearwater Chamber of Commerce held their annual gala. You might be surprised to learn that Scientology is one of its sponsors. But you might not be surprised to learn that the outgoing chair of the chamber, Katie Cole, is a prominent local attorney who represents Scientology. Scientology's lawyer was the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. Okay. In fact, Katie is the protege of Ed Armstrong, a local legend in the real estate zoning law practice who has represented Scientology's interests since I first hired Ed in the early 90s. This is Scientology Safe Pointing 101. Find a well-connected attorney and pay them to be your representative. It is the first action taken when any problem arises. If a lawsuit is filed in Hoboken, an Office of Special Affairs mission is fired to research what attorney has the most influence and is in best with the local judges, and they are hired at a premium rate. There are numerous examples. When Scientology was sued by the Rathbins in Texas, Scientology hired the biggest law firms in San Antonio and a former Texas Supreme Court justice in Austin. When Scientology filed a lawsuit in the Eastern District of Virginia, the lawyer who had the best relationship with the judge was hired. When Bernie McCabe filed charges against Scientology in Pinellas County, one of his former deputy state attorneys, Lee Fugate, was hired. When the FBI was investigating Scientology in Los Angeles, they hired a former assistant U.S. attorney from Los Angeles, Jerry Chaliff, who has been on the payroll of Scientology forever and sat on the LA Police Commission. When he wasn't well enough connected in the U.S. Attorney's Office to do the job, they hired someone new, and so on and so on and so on. Scientology uses its tax-exempt money to buy influence, often through the lawyers it hires. This is what part of the $1 million a month they spend on legal and professional fees goes to. God forbid Scientology gets its hooks into someone who has even more local influence than Mary Repper. For example, Brian Onks Jr. is someone who comes to mind. God forbid they get their hooks into someone like Brian Onks Jr. That would be the death of downtown Clearwater. Brian Onks Jr. is a powerhouse in Pinellas County and the surrounding counties. He has huge sway in Clearwater, Tampa, and St. Petersburg. Brian is a lawyer and a lobbyist, and his dad used to be the mayor of Clearwater. Nothing happens in this town without Brian knowing about it, and hiring Brian to represent you or to lobby for you practically guarantees that things are going to go your way. I like Brian. I've met him several times. We even went head to head at a few city council and county commission meetings where we were on opposite sides of a commercial development proposal that needed city and council approval. Brian was representing the developer, and I was representing the neighborhoods in the community that were opposed to this commercial development going up in a historic residential neighborhood. I was representing the neighborhoods to try and stop it. Needless to say, Brian won, but it was a well-fought battle, and there are no hard feelings over it. I genuinely like Brian. I know Brian doesn't have political aspirations. He's perfectly happy being a lawyer and a lobbyist. It's a good living, but Scientology's money is just as green as anyone else's. I don't believe Brian has ever taken any money from Scientology to forward their interests, but I really do worry about what will happen if Scientology manages to get its hooks into Brian or someone like him. We need Brian and others like him to stay on the side of Clearwater. If Brian or a couple others like him start taking Scientology's money, we're fucked. Well and proper. They already have their hooks into Mary Repper, and I'm sure plenty of others like her, but Mary's influence is on the decline, and someone like Brian Onks Jr., he is on the rise. If Clearwater has any hope of bringing its downtown business district back to life for real, especially on the back of the huge Imagine Clearwater project that is moving forward in our downtown area and on our waterfront, it is so important that the city leaders, the local business leaders, and the lobbyists that they know and rub shoulders with every day be on the exact same page on the direction Clearwater is heading. Scientology is not on board with the direction the city leaders want to go, no matter what they say. Any local politicians, business leaders, or lobbyists who take money from Scientology to help forward their agenda are working directly against the city of Clearwater's efforts to bring its downtown business district back to life. Everyone has to understand this. I've spent a lot of time with local leaders answering their questions about what Scientology is really about, why do they behave the way they do, and what their motivations really are. I disdain people like Mary Repper and Wally Pope and Ed Armstrong who take Scientology's dirty money to help them forward their agenda. I think they're pathetic. And if it weren't for people like them, Scientology would not have any influence at all. Scientology and their brand and their reputation is so toxic that if it were not for the influence they buy from people like Mary and Wally Pope and Ed Armstrong, they simply wouldn't have any. There's a lot of stuff happening locally that Scientology is rightfully terrified of and would do almost anything to interfere with. Whether it's the ongoing investigation the Clearwater PD is doing into all of the child sex crimes that have occurred right here at Scientology's flag land base and never been reported to the authorities, or whether it's the likelihood of a grand jury being convened on the matter, or whether it's the existence of the Aftermath Foundation that is helping people leave the Sea Organization, helping people leave Scientology's ideal orgs, and helping people leave Scientology, and who are giving us up-to-date information on just how small and failing these organizations really are. There's plenty going on around here that Scientology is going to throw an awful lot of money around to try and interfere with. We have to have people who care more about standing on their principles than they do about taking Scientology's money. Clearwater needs the help of all of its people, and it needs its people and its leadership to stay united. So I guess if there's a moral of this story, it would be, for the love of God, please do not take their goddamn money. I'm sure I could go on, but I think I've covered all the points that I wanted to. Thank you all for watching. If you've made it this far, that's all I've got for now. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.